Russian families say goodbye to their loved ones as President Putin orders reservist troops to the battlefield as part of his mobilisation mandate. The self-declared People's Republic of Luhansk in occupied Ukraine prepares for a referendum on joining Russia, but British intelligence warns the outcome is fixed. Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi says the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini in police custody must be investigated as violent protests continue across the country. Scenes like these are becoming the norm all over Russia. A family bids a heartbroken farewell to one of its members who is leaving for the front. Tens of thousands of Russians have been called to the battlefield in Ukraine, and this might just be the first phase. Hackers claiming to have broken into the Defence Ministry's website say they have found a list of military recruits totalling 1 million people. Independent Russian media says that Moscow is forcibly drafting civilians, even those arrested in anti-war protests. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says, by the way, total mobilisation has been conducted in Ukraine for many years within the entire adult population, including women. Kyiv has recruited them into the ranks of Ukrainian nationalist battalions and the Ukrainian armed forces. But Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky says 55,000 Russian soldiers have died in this war in 6 months. Tens of thousands are wounded, maimed. Do you want more? No. Then protest, fight, run away or surrender to Ukrainian captivity. These are the options for you to survive. Many Russians have decided to escape this compulsory mobilisation through international airports. But others are trying to escape over land to countries such as Finland. However, a number of European countries are considering restricting visas for Russian citizens as much as possible. Soon after Russia's president called for partial mobilisation, many videos went viral on social media showing queues of vehicles at border crossings. Euronews Georgia was on the ground and spoke to Russian citizens entering the country. The majority did not want to talk in front of the cameras, but those who did openly called President Vladimir Putin's decision insane.
Здесь пробка 10 километров. Вчера это было там.
There is a queue of about 10 kilometers. Today I came here early in the morning and just managed to enter. Today I spoke with my friend. He's in Krasnodar. He said that there are no men in the streets. He said it's strange because there was no traffic jams, no cars. They've all disappeared.
Russian citizens are also trying to enter Georgia via plane. Tbilisi abolished visa requirements for Russians in 2012.
I will try to find a job in Georgia. Then we will see. I will go anywhere but Russia. Everything that I was working so hard for in Moscow for 30 years was all in vain. My education, job, my private life. I have reached this place empty-handed.
Russia and Georgia have no diplomatic relations since the war in 2008, so there are no direct flights between both countries. Nevertheless, Russians are travelling indirectly through countries such as Turkey, Azerbaijan or Armenia. Russia is preparing referendums in the territories seized from Ukraine. In Luhansk, ballots were printed in a hurry in time for voting, which begins Friday. But British intelligence says the outcome has already been decided. In these territories, the results will suggest residents voted yes to annexation. And as of next week, Moscow will consider Luhansk to be part of Russia. This reporter says, will you vote in the referendum? This resident says yes, because I'm for Russia, for all of us. So to say the Donbass residents. While this local resident says we want some kind of clarity and stability. We will go to take part in the referendum. While this man says Russia is a powerful country. It's the future, the power, the truth. So to be part of Russia is our big, how shall I put it, desire. We have been waiting for this for so long. From September 23rd to the 27th, the occupied territories of Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson and Zaporizhia will hold these votes, which will not be recognised by any country that is not a close ally of Russia. Experts say that the objective of these express referendums is for Russia to declare that Ukrainian attacks on these areas are attacks on Russian soil and will allow Moscow to respond more forcefully.
Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi has acknowledged the state is investigating the death of Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old girl who died in the custody of the morality police for not wearing the veil properly. Protests have swept the country since the incident, but the president has accused the West of double standards over what happened. When these incidents occur all over the world, he says, the same standard must be applied to them. Calling for investigations only on this issue, why not call for the exact same thing for those who lose their lives at the hands of law enforcement and other agents throughout the West, Europe, North America and the United States of America? Those who suffer unjust beatings, he says. Why are there no investigations that follow? At least 9 people have been killed in the crackdown on the widespread protests, but the demonstrations show no signs of winding down. In addition to the violent repression of the demonstrations, the authorities have cut off social networks in the country, such as WhatsApp and Facebook, although they claim these are only partial cuts. Iran has not seen such violent protests since November 2019, when people took to the streets over the price of oil.
It is just 10 days to go until the Brazilian presidential election, and incumbent leader Jair Bolsonaro has been attending some high-profile events, not just in Brazil, but around the world as well, including the funeral of Britain's Queen Elizabeth II, with his critics accusing him of using the visit to score points at home. Well, here to talk about this in more detail is Euronews journalist Jay Marquez. Jay, I think it's fair to say that Mr Bolsonaro has been something of a controversial figure during his time in office, but his latest actions have been attracting quite some attention.
That's right, Helena. President Bolsonaro is in full-on campaigning mode. In the last 2 weeks alone, he attended 3 very high-profile events, and he turned those into what his critics say political rallying. The first one being the 200 years anniversary of the Brazilian independence from Portugal. Very formal, very civic events, and the president was there to represent the nation as a head of state. But he turned those, according to his critics, into campaigning, pure campaigning. So much so that the Electoral Commission has asked him to take down some of the footage that he recorded during that event. The second one, as you mentioned, the funeral of the Queen Elizabeth II in London. President Bolsonaro had arrived in London, and he made a political speech from the balcony of the Brazilian embassy, disrespecting some passers-by in a very sensitive time for Britain. And the third one being more recently, just 2 days ago, at the opening of the United Nations General Assembly. Brazil has traditionally been the first country to do a speech just after the General Secretary, ahead even of the United States, the hosts. And President Bolsonaro just decided to criticize his political rivals at that speech and just say how much he's done in the last 4 years during his time in office.
Well, it's interesting to see, whatever you think in terms of taste with regards to some of these events, that the Electoral Commission, as you say, have intervened. But I guess the big question is, Jay, how is he doing in the polls at the moment?
Right. He is in second place behind the former president Lula da Silva. Lula has 47% of the intentions of the vote at the moment, and President Bolsonaro has 35%. In the 20 years that I have followed Brazilian politics, polls are not very accurate all the time, but if these are to be trusted, former President Lula da Silva is only 4 points from being elected president in the first round of the elections. But President Bolsonaro has been consistently criticizing the electoral system in Brazil in a twist of Donald Trump's strategy in America. President Bolsonaro has been criticizing the electronic voting machines that we use in Brazil. It's slightly ironic because the president himself was elected through that system, as well as 3 out of his 4 sons have been elected through that system. And in the last 30 years, the 4 of them won 19 elections using those machines. So some say that he's not just concerned about losing the power of the presidency, but also concerned about his immunity because he faces numerous inquiries in different courts in Brazil at the moment.